Oh, the Bill Watts era of WCW. You had so much good, you had so much weird, and you had so much taking it way back in time. Do, we go back in time. And it made the product somewhat boring. I'm John Renton with the Retro Review of WCW Starrcade 1992. In the Omni in Atlanta, when they were able to fill that goddamn thing, it was fucking phenomenal. There were some loud portions, to this show. The crowd really tried to bring up the energy, but the Omni in Atlanta had 8,000 people there. The capacity for the Omni in Atlanta, I've said that so much it has lost all fucking meaning, held considerably more than 8,000 people. It has been demolished, I think, since 1998, but hosted a lot of great goddamn shows. Now, that being said, this is one of my favorite Starrcades of all time, even with the issues. And there are some issues that I will be talking about, but I want to know your guys' thoughts on the show in the comments, please. And since this was during the Bill Watts era of WCW, there's been a bunch of stories going around about why Bill Watts left WCW and why, he was no longer the VP of, operations, whatever the title actually was. Do you think it was that he was racist, he was misguided, he was ignorant, he just couldn't handle the corporate environment? What do you think it was? Because yes, there's a whole thing where he pushed JYD and Butch Reed and various others and made Ron Simmons world heavyweight champion. And then there's also the rumors and rumblings that he didn't get along with Heyman for how Heyman was, and if you know what I mean, you know what I mean. I don't know if that's actually the case. There's always been rumor and innuendo, and Bill Watts has been known as an abrasive personality, so I'd like to ask that question to you all once again. Now, the 10th Anal Starrcade, I think that's how that goes, and we were kind of the butt of certain jokes during this show because there are two matches on this show that still hold up to this very day. And there are some other good matches on this show, and it's more layered than Starrcade 1991, which was all about the Queefle Lottery. I'm kidding, it's the Lethal Lottery, but it might as well have been Queefle Lottery, because it, was about as messy. And they narrowed it down from, I think it was 10 or 11 tag matches that they had. I think it was 10 matches on Starrcade 1991, which I may retro review. We will see, considering the fact that I gotta be doing a whole bunch of work this month, and I got some other projects on my plate, so we'll see what I can do. But it's nice to revisit this stuff, and considering even with the holes that this Starrcade is one of my favorites of all time, that's why I wanted to rewatch it. So, the graphics department forgot who Pillman and Windham were because they had Pillman and Windham and swapped the names. You had one job, graphics department, what the fuck. Dark match was Brad Armstrong versus Shanghai Pierce to feature Henry O. Godwin. Easy for me to say, yes, under a mask. Only he could have wrestled under a mask for his entire career. So, Jim Ross and Jesse Ventura on commentary, and I will say this, Ventura was at least motivated at this point. By the time it got to the last, I'd say the last 6 months of his WCW run, and maybe it was because he wanted to go home, maybe it's because the conspiracy theory brainworms were starting to infest his head, infesting in his ears and nesting, testing, attention please, and he started to lose all of his hair, if you please, and he decided to go all nuts and become the governor of Minnesota. Okay, couldn't really rhyme that all that well, but this is when Ventura was motivated, and JR, this is one of the last big events that he would call for WCW. I don't remember if he called Super Brawl 3 or not, because I know that he was part of WrestleMania 9 at the beginning of April 1993 for WWE. Congratulations, JR, you've made it to WWE. Now you can call one of the worst WrestleManias of all time. But back to Starrcade 1992. Bischoff with a special WCW magazine report because he had the Ken doll hair. He was a C-Squad announcer, as he's talked about, and says Rick Rude is not going to be part of the Starrcade 1992 card. He's out with an injury. He's being replaced by Dr. Death. So Dr. Death will take on WCW World Heavyweight Champion Ron Simmons. And it's kind of funny that where Bischoff would end up being just a year later, he would, start really taking hold in late 93, early 94, and then things would really start to rise up. I will give Bischoff this much credit. He understood how to help make WCW profitable, but then his methods also ended up just making it impossible for the company to do anything unless they were doing record boffo business because of all the contracts. That being said, it took the company to new heights, and then they fell even further for a variety of reasons. The AOL Time Warner merger is a big part of that. So JR and Ventura desperately tried to explain the Queefle Lottery, and it was an interesting concept as far as making unlikely teams and all that, and again, they cut it down from Starrcade 1991. It was all tag teams and the two-ring Battle Royale, if you will, without the collars around their necks. Battle Royal, that's a movie I should review. But anyway, this is one ring, and it's going to be eight. It's going to be 8 teams, and the winning teams get to advance to a one-ring battle royal. Okay, nice and concise. So Shivani, Hank Aaron, and Bill Watts are there. And yeah, all the stuff about, Hank Aaron, Bill Watts, who knows what's actually true. Sting gets presented with a Battle Bowl ring for winning last year. Then Larry Zbyszko and Missy Hyatt, they do the numbers and do the number tumbler and everything. And I will say this, Missy Hyatt certainly was prominently featuring a couple assets, if you will. Nothing against Missy Hyatt. They really should have used her more as a heel. I think her as a Nasty Boys manager actually worked better, because take a look at how Missy Hyatt was in World Class Universal Wrestling Federation. Not to be confused with Herb Abrams. Let's hear it for the... No wonder Bill Watts might have been influenced by Herb Abrams. I kid. If you know, you know. But, Missy, I certainly was transfixed when Missy Hyatt was on screen. So, Gary Michael Capetta, the world's most dangerous ring announcer, does the, ring announcing. Otherwise, it would be weird if he was just getting coffee for everybody. I do like Gary Michael Capetta, though. He just has a booming voice and really, really enthusiastic and just gives it that sports-based feel. Heavy Metal Van Hammer. And I'm sorry, but the current Von Wagner just looks like Van Hammer, just a Cro-Magnon version of him, and now you can't unsee it. He teamed with Dangerous Danny Spivey against Cactus Jack and Johnny B. Bad. So there were heavy shots all around everything. This one wasn't dull, but it was like, okay, obviously Cactus Jack and Johnny B. Bad aren't going to get along. We get a bit of a miscue and Bad clocks Jack, and then he gets rolled up 1, 2, 3. The most devastating maneuver in all professional wrestling, the surprise roll up 1, 2, 3. Vader and Dustin Rhodes took on Kensuke Sasaki and the Barbarian. The Barbarian, who had faced off against Ron Simmons at Halloween Havoc just a couple months prior. Race was in the corner of Vader. Obviously, it'd be weird if he wasn't at this time. The Barbarian and Vader just doing big old man meat slapping into each other and bop, 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 bop. And Sasaki and Dustin did some, they clubbed each other, and Kensuke Sasaki, who would later become Power Warrior, along with Road Warrior Hawk, in I believe it was New Japan for a little bit, until Hawk and Animal reunited. There was a good pace, and of course, the most devastating maneuver in all of professional wrestling, the surprise roll-up 1, 2, 3. I'm shocked. It's like nothing's changed in 30 fucking years. Vader then clubs Dustin afterwards, because we won. I don't like you. Boom. So anyway, Super Brawl 3 plug for February 21st, where we get the White Castle Fierce Strap-On match. I think that's how that went. So we get Windham and the Great Muta, and they face off against each other a little bit later because they beat Too Cold Scorpio and Brian Pillman Jr. Fun fact, Barry Windham and Pillman on opposite sides here. They're going to be in the Unified Tag Team Championship match a little bit later. More on that in just a few minutes. And then they're also going to be part of Battle Bowl. Well, Windham and Muda are. Too Cold Scorpio wasn't, because Windham and Pillman did some stuff, but this was mainly the crowd being into it because they got to see Great Muda. Nothing against Too Cold Scorpio. But we get a melee at the end, DDT, moonsault that Muda totally missed. Because Muda couldn't really be bothered to care about a lot of stuff in WCW and got the victory. Dr. Death, Steve Williams, and Sting against Eric Watts and Jushin Thunder Liger. What did Jushin Thunder Liger do? Whose cornflakes did he piss in to have to deal with Eric fucking Watts? Who I'm sure is a lovely human being. Never belonged in goddamn wrestling. It's like David Flair with a little more athletic ability. It's like Reed Flair, alive. So, I don't. He's like if the worst Von Erich was, well, still alive. So, moving on from that, Dr. Death was really something special, just clubbing on Watts' kid, and it's kind of funny because Dr. Death, Steve Williams, got his big break again, with Bill Watts' company, Mid-South Wrestling, and Cornette's talked about stories with him, and I mean, Dr. Death really just fucking tremendous. In Mid-South Wrestling, in All Japan, teaming with Terry Bam Bam Gordy, a terrific fucking team, and also some of the stuff that he had in Crockett. So, Liger just laid out by a lariat. That was actually kind of funny. He just sells it like, just doing that. Liger could not be barred. I mean, Liger always gave effort, but once I think he saw he was teaming with Eric Watts, he's like, well, I'm not going to try very hard here. And stun gun-like maneuver on Eric, 1, 2, 3. So at least the one that should have taken the pin took the pin. I know it sounds like I'm dumping on Eric Watts, and I am. He didn't belong in wrestling. But anyway, we get footage of Muda and Chono in Japan. Now, the Great Muda versus Masahiro Chono for the NWA Heavyweight Championship. Okay, you're thinking 1992, Great Muda and Masahiro Chono. Even though Chono was dealing with the after effects of a neck injury after Stone Cold Steve Austin had botched a tombstone on a show, and Chono was dealing with those after effects. He was still wrestling because he was just like, okay, I gotta change up my style, I gotta do this. And Chono, very well respected. And then it's kind of funny, 5 years later, almost 5 years later, same thing happened to Stone Cold Steve Austin when Owen Hart accidentally did what he did at SummerSlam 1997. So, I do not understand exactly how this match turned out to be one of the most boring experiences that I've seen. And look, Muda was not just going to fly around the ring for everything. Yes, he did the moonsault and that. He was going to taper it down because he made more of his money in Japan, especially after his previous experience wrestling in WCW when they should have turned him full-fledged babyface because he would have gotten really fucking over. He left, he went back to Japan, made a goddamn fortune, is still well respected to this very day. And Chono, yes, I understand he was dealing with the neck injury and all that, but God, this match was boring. There was like 2,000% mat wrestling here, which, yes, you don't want Chono flying around, especially when they're both making such a living in Japan. They meet so much, even though there is a bond between New Japan Pro Wrestling and, WCW. But it just... Muda hurt his knee, and we get a nice superplex at one point. We got some good moves, and then the crowd would just die because they would go back to mat wrestling. And then STF for the win, and the crowd boos. The crowd probably booed because they were bored by it, and that's a shame because there were two premier talents here, but it was boring. So, Rude can't compete in January, I think by January 23rd, which I think is the next Clash of Champions. He'll be stripped of the U.S. Championship. So he blames the doctors, he's all upset and everything. And now we move on to Dr. Death Steve Williams against Ron Simmons for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. And JR mentions how both men were on opposite sides of respective football teams for the 1979 and 1980 National Championship games, I believe. Ron Simmons playing for Florida State. I believe Dr. Death Steve Williams played for the Oklahoma Sooners. I think. I'm actually trying to remember because I drew a blank right there, so I apologize. But there was some good power stuff and some good knee focus and shoulder focus. Unfortunately, then it started to get to the point where that's all they were doing. Because, yeah, there were a lot of people wrestling multiple times on this show, and I think that Bill didn't understand that maybe worked in the territories, and you could, bonus people and stuff like that, but this is more corporate, and so you couldn't have people necessarily just doing like, two or three shots in the same night. And sure, it wasn't the best. There was some good, psychology, working on a knee, working on a shoulder and stuff like that. Unfortunately, we do end up getting a double countout decision, which the crowd boos. We get a brief aftermath, which the crowd boos because the crowd is upset with these dodgy finishes. The referees try to stop it. Even though it's a double countout, Dr. Death Steve Williams comes off the top rope, driving his knee into Ron Simmons' head. And the referee reverses the decision because after the match, Dr. Death Steve Williams came off the top rope. That whole off the top rope thing was so fucking stupid. That's one thing with Bill Watts where he really should have not done that. That was stupid. And it was a monumentally dumb decision. In the over the top rope move, I hated that even in the goddamn territory days. Now, I get it, but that is one thing that I never really liked about the territory days. Sometimes it could lead to rematches, other times it was just lazy. And it was just desperate, to like try and wring more money out of people. See AWA Super Sunday 1983 when they were ready to burn the goddamn St. Paul Civic Center to the fucking ground when Hogan didn't win the championship. But Ron Simmons retains the championship, and Dr. Death Steve Williams moves on to Battle Bowl. So we get Super Brawl 3 ad. So cheesy. So fucking cheesy. Shivani and Zbyszko recap what led to the Tag Team Championship match, and it is Barry Windham and Flying Brian Pillman against Shane Douglas and Ricky Steamboat for the unified WCW Tag Team Championships. I believe it's the NWA and WCW tag titles. And that's because WCW is moving away from the NWA. This was fucking terrific. If you see nothing else on this show, see this in the next match. Why is that? This is classic tag team wrestling. Shane Douglas was the less experienced of the three. I don't know who thought that He's a Family Man was a good idea for Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. And if you ever heard the theme, you know what I'm talking about. It's so fucking bad. I blame Bonnie, that stupid twat. Oh, Bonnie Steamboat, well, the former Bonnie Steamboat was having the worst goddamn time in the world because she was a stupid, undeserving, never belonged in wrestling twat. And nuked a lot of his career for no goddamn reason. Anyway, Douglas was targeted for a while, and he kept just battling back just enough, but no, he couldn't get the tag. He couldn't get the tag. He couldn't get the tag. Fucking terrific psychology. I can't describe it perfectly. I can't describe anything perfectly. It's just a fan's perspective. Steamboat uses a chair outside to a pop, and then eventually they milked this goddamn thing, like, you know, this one girl that I used to pay for in college, and I'm not going to tell you what she did, but let's just say there was a lot of stuff, and we need a stool and a pail to get this whole thing going. Anyway, eventually, Ricky Steamboat gets the hot tag. The crowd explodes, even though it's only like half capacity, because at the Omni in Atlanta, again, held more than 8,000 people. The crowd goes nuts. Boom, 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 boom. Doing some great stuff here. Eventually, Shane Douglas is back in. Pillman is back in. And we get Barry Windham and Steamboat battling on the ramp, because they had the ramp leading to the ring. Looks like Pillman's going to get the victory. Belly to belly from Shane Douglas. 1, 2, 3. Crowd roars. Easy for me to say. Good stuff. Really good shit. And there you go. So, that was a fucking terrific match. Vader with Harley Race versus Sting for the King of the Cable Finals. What is the King of the Cable Finals? Who the fuck knows? They win a trophy. That's about it. These two never had a bad match. I don't think they could have a bad match if they tried. Crowd loved it whenever Sting was on offense. Vader was just clubbing him down, everything. He would give Sting just enough, hit a belly-to-back suplex, or just hit something where he hit a rolling kick. He'd just get him like outside. He'd go for the splash onto the guardrail, but he'd hit the guardrail instead of Vader. And then Vader would just start punching him and, punching him, clubbing him, and all that stuff and everything. And JR does a great job with the storytelling. Maybe Vader will punch himself out. Ventura says, like, Foreman and Zaire, the whole rope-a-dope thing. And then, the one line that still rings up, I'll tell you, Vader's punches are getting weaker. He's trying to punch him, and he's getting tired. And Sting fires up. Vader does eventually get Sting down, even though he gives Sting a great comeback. Goes for a splash, hits the splash, but bounces off of him. Can't cover him in time, and so he's going to go for another splash. Sting catches him in a power slam off the top. 1, 2, 3. Sting wins. And then Sting has a promo afterwards where he's going to try to win Battle Bowl, because he won a tag match to get into Battle Bowl, won the King of the Cable Finals, and now we go to the Battle Bowl 92 ring making, which is really, really cheesy with all the Lawnmower Man graphics. If you've seen that movie, I'm sorry. With Paul Hornung, who is an NFL Hall of Famer with the Green Bay Packers, I believe. So, Battle Bowl 92 Battle Royal. Dangerous Dan Spivey, Dustin Rhodes, Great Muda, Barry Windham, Dr. Death, Steve Williams, Van Hammer, Vader, and Sting. Vader and Sting go at it right on the ring, right on the ramp, rather. Why was Van Hammer in this? Well, he wasn't in it very long. Van Hammer got tossed out. Hooray! No Van Hammer. And Spivey gets eliminated, and then Vader and Sting are out because they eliminate each other, because they're going to continue their feud with the White Castle Fear strap-on match at Super Brawl 3. And Wyndham's nose is bleeding. Dustin and Dr. Death tumble out, and it's down to the Great Muda and down to Great Muda and Barry Windham as the sun goes fucking nova outside my house. I apologize for that. And the Great Muda wins and celebrates. We get a whole lot of pyro, and the Great Muda is the Battle Bowl champion. And then they would do one standalone Battle Bowl pay-per-view in 1993, which I retro-viewed, and it wasn't very good. Anyway, though, this pay-per-view, pretty damn good, even with the issues. But yeah, the tag title match and Sting versus Vader are the two matches you absolutely rather should go out of your way to check. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.